Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. My name is Abadar Al-Khadari, and it is a great pleasure to be here with you today for all of our dear brothers and sisters that are tuning in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and elsewhere. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to a very productive session with our respected scholar, Sheikh Shabar Mahdi, and our respected lecturers and speakers, Haj Jalal Mughniya, Sayyid Shabir Kermani, Haj Wissam Bazzi, and also we will be joined shortly with Sheikh Ahmad Bazi. I am also pleased to be with my co-host, Brother Muhammad Baqir Al-Abaidi. Inshallah, we look forward to a session where hopefully we will have the opportunity, after listening to our wonderful speakers during the holy month of Ramadan and getting a lot of insight about them and about various topics in religion, in spirituality, in ethics. Personally, anything and everything that can help us grow in this holy month, inshallah, tonight is an opportunity for us to learn more about them, about their background, and also to get more insight into their sessions and what was behind the different topics and presentations that they gave, and finally practical takeaways and different things that we can take with us post-Eid that can hopefully help us keep the momentum going, so inshallah we can continue to journey on in our pursuit for self-betterment. The holy month of Ramadan is not the end of it, inshallah. It's the start, and it was an opportunity for rejuvenation and for a renaissance within. And inshallah, the speakers will highlight practically some of the reflections and takeaways that we can walk away with after the holy month of Ramadan. At any point, if you have any questions or reflections, please feel free to share those with us. We are live, so inshallah, we will take your questions and we will get the insight from our respected speakers.
Ahsantum Sayyidina. Thanks for the intro, and welcome to everyone that's joining, inshallah, around the world. Alhamdulillah, of course, the situation that's occurred over the last few months has been one which maybe wouldn't have been ideal for such a period where we like to come together at the mosques, at the centers, to commemorate the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam and to enjoy with one another in this blessed month. But alhamdulillah, thanks to the partnering organizations who have been working together throughout the Shahr of Ramadan, we've managed to put together, alhamdulillah, an extensive program for everyone to benefit as much as possible and to get a wider and broader experience throughout this month as we could. So alhamdulillah, I think just because of the work that's been put in, it's worth just mentioning all of the different organizations and centers across the world, predominantly the US and the UK, who have been partnering in this program. So those are in the UK, Arkan Network, Babul Ilm, IUS Manchester, Wali al-Asir, Ja'fariya Foundation, MKSI Leicester, the Islamic Society of Wales, KSIMC of Birmingham, Jami'at al-Muntadhir, Masjid Imam Ali, Muhibban Youth, the Zainabiyya non-profit, Imam Ali Masjid in the US now, Florida International University, Al-Rasul Islamic Center, Al-Kawthar Organization of Buffalo, the West Michigan Islamic Center, Iman, the Shia Ithna Ashari Islamic Jamaat of LA, Mateen Center, and Al-Ghadir Benevolent Foundation. So alhamdulillah, we thank all of these centers for their hard work and contributions throughout the month. And hopefully everyone from these centers is watching now and is able to join us for almost a final capture of what's been covered so far in the month with our speakers. Ahsantum, thank you.
And throughout the whole month of Ramadan, our respected speakers were able to share some insight with various community members across the world through these various organizations. And inshallah, tonight will be an opportunity to learn more from our respected speakers. And also, it will be an opportunity, and I look forward to it, to get to know them more on a personal level. Before we get right into speaking with our guests here, I would like to introduce them very briefly. We have first Sheikh Shabbar Mahdi, who is currently a student in the Hawza in the holy city of Qom, and he is currently studying and teaching the classical postgraduate Hawza curriculum. Sheikh Shabbar has a BA in Islamic Studies from the Oriental and African Studies. I've had the pleasure to meet the respected Sheikh in the UK at a camp where we both attended. And I'm a big fan of the Sheikh as a student of the Hawza that we can all learn from, and also a very well versed speaker. So thank you, Sheikhna, for joining us. We also have Haj Jalal Mughniya. Haj Jalal Mughniya is a lawyer, public speaker, and an author. He is currently a practicing attorney with the At Law Group based in Dearborn, Michigan, and he is also a trustee with the Mainstay Foundation. I've known Haj Jalal for over 16 years. We go back to 6th grade, and it's been a pleasure to have him truly as a brother. So thank you, Haj Jalal, for joining us as well. Next, we have our dear brother and friend from Canada, Sheikh Ahmed Bazzi. Sheikh Ahmed is a 6th year Hawza student at Imam Hussein Hawza in Windsor, Ontario. He teaches at the foundation and conducts various religious workshops and programming and training for kids, adults, and parents. He has a diploma in mechanical engineering, auto product design, and a diploma in computer aided design and manufacturing. I also had the opportunity to meet the respected Sheikh at Imam Hussein Foundation a few years ago. And, through this whole month, I've been benefiting from his lectures as well. Thank you, Sheikhna, for joining us. We also have Haj Wissam Bazzi, a dear brother. Haj Wissam is recognized in the direct sales industry as an elite training expert in coaching leadership management, sales, marketing, and personal development. He works day in and day out with high-level executives in life and business planning, and he is currently completing his graduate studies in psychology. I've known Haj Wissam for over 12 years. We've worked together, we volunteered together, and it has always been a pleasure to know Haj Wissam and to benefit from him as well. Thank you, Haj Wissam, for joining us. And last but not least, we have Sayyid Shabir Kermani, who is a poet, a public speaker, and a data scientist. Sayyid Shabir is currently pursuing his PhD from UCF. He has traveled the world speaking on various topics in religion and professional development and entrepreneurship. And he is involved with various organizations, including the Mainstay Foundation. Sayyid Shabir, a dear brother who I've known for years and benefited from, thank you for joining us as well. So inshallah, we'll get right into it. And Brother Muhammad, take the lead.
Ahsantum Sayyidina, thank you for the rundown of that. I think in addition to what the Sayyid has now mentioned in terms of just giving us a brief background and understanding about our respected speakers and scholars here with us today, we thought that, of course, the viewers have been watching us, and everyone and the brothers and sisters have been, listening to you for the last sort of 4 weeks or a month, and they've been gaining all this information. But maybe it would be useful to try and get a bit of an understanding as to, from yourselves, how is it that you came across, your certain expertise that you speak about, or the topics that you covered? Because obviously, as was mentioned by Sayyid Abadar just now, each one of our respective speakers has a different approach or a different angle they're approaching things from, whether it's from the respected sheikhs who obviously are attending Hawza, whether it's Haj Wissam, who's got his experience in business and in industry, or whether it's Sayyid Shabir doing his studies currently, or Haj Jalal, who's practicing law, everyone has their own angle and take on things, but maybe it'd be good to know, how is it that you selected the path that you went down and that you're currently working in, and how did that come to be? And of course, anyone can chip in, but maybe Sheikh Shubbar, if we can start with you and you just give us an update or a brief overview of that.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to all of the brothers and sisters, inshallah, that are watching our discussion. You said brief overview, but I think that question we could take the whole of our discussion to speak about. And I think everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own reason why they got into looking at lecturing Islam, lecturing religion in general. And obviously the first hadith or thing that comes to my mind is the hadith where the Imam alayhi wassalam says, إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِعَبْدِهِ خَيْرًا. We have a number of these type of riwayat. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do when he loves his servants? And one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does when he loves his servants, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay.
So one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does when he loves his servants is that he pushes them towards the religion and understanding and gaining insight into the religion. And so often people find a change in their hearts. And this is something also mentioned in the riwayat, that the riwayah says that the heart of any person is in between the two fingers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, metaphorically. Because when something is in your two fingers, you can change it whichever way you wish to. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think for all of us, pushed our hearts into a certain direction and gave us certain interests and made us want to serve his religion. So mine is very similar. When I was coming from a background of my father being a scholar, so naturally the environment was one of Hawza and Islamic education and this and that. And I remember from a very young age that my mother would sometimes tell me stories of the different ulama and different things that took place with different scholars. And I remember some of those stories. And in fact, I've mentioned some of those stories in some of my majalis. And that, of course, increased my interest into Islamic sciences and seeing the work of my father and other scholars. And then I remember, and I often give credit to Sayyid al-Shuhada, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, that I had gone to ziyarah when I was, let's say, 14. When I'd gone to ziyarah, now at that time I had thought to go into maybe another profession and then on the side study Islam, but do something else with my life. And then when I have time, study here and there. When I went and I performed the ziyarah, and I often say and give this example that when we visit someone's house, often you bring a gift when you go to someone's house, but they also give you something. They put something in front of you. When you go to someone's house, they give you at least a cup of tea. So likewise, when you go to the houses of the Imma, في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه, they give you something. And to each person, they give something different. And to me, I will, alhamdulillah, in my heart was placed the love for ulum of Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam. And then from then I decided that everything else will come secondary, and this will be the thing that I pursue first. And it's strange because when you look at the nature of the human being, often he worries about different things. You worry about money and how you're going to live and all of these things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a lot of ease to my heart. And I realized, and I still say this today, that one of the most important verses for all of us here is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you help me, I'll help you. And so if we try to do something to help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps. And so that's how I got interest into specifically the Hawza And the kalam is طويل, but I'll inshallah leave it there.
Ahsantum, Shaykhna. Thank you very much. Maybe if we can ask the same question to Hajj Wissam, maybe a similar question about how is it that you came to be where you're at now in your line of work, and some of the projects that you're working on, because it's probably a bit unique to what some of the brothers and guests have on the call right now. So maybe if you give us a similar answer.
But overall, for me, I'm just, number one, I'm grateful. This is just to be like, just on this talk, like in terms of what we're doing right now, to me, it's just a testament to all of us. So I look at you guys as brothers that I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with on the front lines of anything. And I look at speaking, excuse me, I look at a speaker as a person who's on a, literally like, as a soldier. And because you, I need some water, guys, but it's Ramadan. But so on that level, just saying that, I think it takes a lot of courage to identify. Number one thing, it was just finding my own identity. And then putting that stake in the ground and saying, I'm underneath this flag and I'm not moving. And this is who I am as a person. I think that's the number one thing that we're all after. So man arafa nafsa faqad arafa rabbah. So on that level, for me, it stemmed from there. But it's truly to the inside. It's the journey to the inside. There's a universe to the inside that you got to go into. And in that universe, as Imam Ali alayhi salam states, there's like, he doesn't state this, but he says you are your own universe in terms of that. But he states that within that realm of your own self-discovery, there's like there's an island that you have to find in that universe, pretty much. And that island is your uniqueness. And I think if, as the Sheikh stated, Samat Sheikh, you have that once you do that, and you're not afraid of the financials, you're not afraid of people thinking, you know, that tell you to go here because of these things. I think that, and if you have the courage to push forward and to find that island, which is like a pinhole in the universe, I think you really take yourself to a whole nother level. So I think the journey is inward, it's not outward. The inside is, the outside is a testing ground for the outside, for the inside. So for me, when I started on this journey, I've held positions as like the VP of business development for some, you know, multi-million-dollar companies, let's say. And on those levels, you kind of see a different world. But for me, if I were to tell you the essence of what I wanted out of life was, there was one, I was actually doing a acquisition for a one of the shows, and it was about Nahj al-Balagha. And for me, I didn't even know, to be honest with you, what Nahj al-Balagha was. I had no idea. And from there, I'm just sitting there, and I just remember I'm just watching the Sheikh present. And I swear to you, like my whole body just changed at that moment. I don't know what happened. I don't know what, to me, I can't even explain to you. But ultimately, as I was taking notes, because I had to take notes for the acquisition of when to edit the show, as the Sheikh also stated, it's the heart and it's that connection. And I think if you find that within yourself, I think you can become the most powerful person on the face of this earth. And for me, in those moments, and I think the Sheikh and a lot of the guys here know who I'm talking about, but I thank him and I pray for him all the time, because those moments really changed my life. So it's that connection of the concept of Nahj al-Balagha, but it's also that connection to the heart. It's one thing to know about something, it's another thing to feel something. And I think emotions are earned. And once you earn that emotion and you connect your heart properly, that's your navigation system. Because behind Nahj al-Balagha is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, then Allah Azza wa Jal, and that's the road we've all taken. So I appreciate you guys in terms of what you guys have done as well. And I'm honored again to be on here with you. So thank you.
Ahsantum Haj. For those in the UK that maybe aren't as familiar with the work of Haj Wissam, I think just that those 2 minutes of insight would give you just a glimpse into some of the pearls of wisdom that we can gain from the Hajj, inshallah. So definitely after the program, you can see if some of his other work on Instagram or Facebook. It's definitely worth a watch. I think it's just worth noting and mentioning that throughout the program, both in the US and the UK, we are looking to field as many questions as possible. So if anyone has any questions, then please do send them to the phone numbers which you can find on the poster. Alternatively, you can stick your questions in the comments of the YouTube pages. And if you're commenting on the pages of the individual centers, then the centers can inshallah forward the questions onto us or private message the centers or the Mainstay UK or US pages on Instagram as well. And inshallah, we can try and field as many of your questions as possible. We have a few flowing in now. We'll get to them in a bit. I just want to dig a little bit deeper into some of the backgrounds of the speakers. And I guess building on what was said by Samahat al-Sheikh and Haj, one thing which we can see, especially from, for example, Sayyid Shabir's series, was a sort of crossover between what we consider to be, Western academic subjects. Sayyid Shabir, you touched upon economics, philosophy, business, marketing, but you also link that into, the more traditional things which we associate with the centers and topics which we commemorate in Shahr Ramadan. So I guess I would say, are these different areas that you're talking about distinct? Can someone, have multiple pursuits in their life that they take and have that multidisciplinary approach? And if you were to try and, want to do that and be, rounded across different areas, how would someone, starting out want to approach that? Maybe based off of your own experiences and thoughts.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be with the brothers, either virtually or in person. We'll do it virtually this time. I think it's a really, really important question. It's a really pertinent question. It's one that's really near and dear to my heart. I think the shuyukh can comment on this, but the way I see it, knowledge is divided in my mind. Of course, there's Islamic sciences, there's the Quran, and those have tremendous value. But if you ask me personally, in my heart, it's knowledge is either qurbatan ilallah or not. It's either taking you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or it's not. It's either like, and that changes the whole paradigm when you look at it that way. So when I'm in biology class, or I'm in my physics class, or I'm in an economics class or law, I'm thinking, how does that relate to my Lord and my Creator, right? And how does that help me get closer or not? I mentioned this in one of my actually last lectures on Amir al-Mu'minin as a paragon, as an example for how we should be in our lives. And there's a very beautiful example or a very beautiful narration of where he's in the vicinity of the Darul Amara in the courtyard in the middle of the night, and two of his companions see Amir al-Mu'minin in a state of weeping. And he states that it's a long tradition, but the crux of what I want to highlight is that the true spirituality lies in love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ultimately, everything that I do is for Him. Either I get upset for Him, I love people for Him, I get angry at people for Him, all of that. And that's how I see knowledge as well. And this is not just from me, by the way. If you look at our heritage, you will find scholars who had tremendous accomplishments in the religious dimension and in the what we would now call the secular domains. And I'm thinking of the likes of, for example, Nasiruddin al-Tusi, who would be somebody who was at one side the marja of the time, or a grand scholar, and according to the secular world, he would be one of the greatest mathematicians who made major contributions towards sciences as well. In fact, Copernicus's model of the rotation of heavenly bodies is not complete without what's called the Tusi couple. And that's a mathematical instrument, if we can use that term, that was by this person who was the greatest scholar, one of the greatest scholars for Tashayyu', as well as at the same time, one of the greatest secular mathematicians. But if you asked Nasiruddin al-Tusi if he saw a differentiation or delineation or a separation between his mathematical endeavors and his scientific endeavors and his religious endeavors, I would argue that we'd have to ask him what his view is, but he'd perhaps say that this is my Lord, my creator, who created this world that is so organized, that is so scientific, that is so structured. And so that's really what I believe. I don't believe that there's a separation. I believe that everything, if you make that connection, that same biology cell that you're looking at in your bio class, it can take you towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it can take you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, depending on the lens that you use. So I would implore and I'd invite our audience to look at life that way, to try to make connections to the Creator and the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam.
Ahsan Sayyidina. Sheikh Ahmed, I think in a sense you also have a unique experience that with respect to your Hawza studies, you're basically doing those studies in Canada with the Imam Hussein Foundation now. I've come across different brothers and I've met different brothers that have this passion and this drive to pursue Islamic studies and Hawza studies. And I know some of them that went to the holy city of Najaf, some that went to the holy city of Qom. There are different programs across the globe, including the one in Windsor. If you can just shed some light on, the passion that you had that led you down that path, and particularly your decision in pursuing your studies at the Imam Hussein Foundation in Windsor.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my brothers and sisters. So, as we say in Lebanese dialect, الدنيا الصيام, we're fasting. So I don't necessarily like to speak about myself, but as per your request, my experience with the Hawza, I would say, is quite a different one. Alhamdulillah, my parents are very religious people, and I'm very, very proud to be their son. But I don't necessarily come from a scholarly family. Even the Bazi family, as big as it is, it's not necessarily known to be a scholarly family. Although, alhamdulillah, there are many people from the family who are very, very, very religious and influential and known, just like Hajj Wissam and many people from the family. Although it's not necessarily known to be a scholarly family. So. My journey towards Hawza and where I am today, through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a little different. Alhamdulillah, throughout my years, my parents would put us in Arabic schools, and we would go to the Saturday schools and be just like all of the regular children, until I had the honor of coming to the Saturday school of Imam Hussein Foundation. And in that class, I remember we were sitting, and I think it was one of our first classes, and they sat us down and they were teaching us Surah Al-Fatiha. And mind you, I was 13 or 14 at the time. So I was like, these guys don't know what they're dealing with. I already know Surah Al-Fatiha, I'm good. So they were talking and sort of explaining to us Makharij al-Huruf and how to say it correctly. And I noticed that I was actually reciting Surah Al-Fatiha incorrectly. So I fixed the mistake and I began to recite Surah Al-Fatiha correctly, and I would just look out for that mistake. And then I found myself looking out for the entire salat, and I found myself now praying with a little bit more meaning, and I was sort of thinking about what was being said. And subhanAllah, that was the little doorway that I went through, and it sparked interest in other things. So then I began to come during the week to the different classes that were held in the Hawza here for, just anybody that wanted to learn. And I found myself here every single day. So I was like, you know what, why don't I step into one of the Hawza classes that are being held? I stepped in and I never came out. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I'm here, as they say now. So it's a testament to the famous quote, whether it's a hadith or it's a famous quote that is known amongst the community. Anta turid wa ana urid wallahu yaf'alu ma yurid. You desire, I desire, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does as He desires. And ultimately, this is an honor for myself to be sitting here in the Hawza, and it's a testament also to the to how progressive our communities have become, and not just how progressive they've become, what benefit the mu'assasat, the institutions, actually bring about in the community, what they actually provide, and the fruit that they bring about. That I wasn't somebody that even thought of going to Hawza and speaking one day. And alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, now I'm amongst you, and that itself is an honor. So it speaks of what our institutions can produce and the products that it can really produce from people that are in the community just wanting to learn. So it really does highlight that. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.
Alhamdulillah, ahsant. Haj Jalal, given your experience as a professional, as a practicing attorney, and at the same time serving the community as a speaker, as a mentor for a lot of youth that I know, some people might ask the question, at any point, do you have a conflict in terms of, at one point during your day, you might be in court, and at another point, you're talking about religion, you're talking about ethics. Is there a conflict? Have you had certain points where maybe you question whether both can coexist effectively?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think just the virtue of having this group of people come together as lecturers, as speakers, talking throughout the holy month of Ramadan, and sharing different perspectives on things. It's amazing how much you can learn from different perspectives. So that's one thing to keep in mind. From my own personal experience, and Sayyid Abu Dharr, you can speak to this as well, given that you're in similar shoes. I actually find this to be one of the best setups for us to practically implement our faith and show how things really come into practice. Be it in the position of being a professional, being an academic, being a business owner, an entrepreneur, whatever it may be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us to be able to implement our faith and be faithful people with the conviction and the truths that he has given us through the Holy Prophet Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and by being who we are, right? I don't need to change my profession or my business in order for me to be a faithful person. Of course, if the business or the profession is in direct conflict with the faith, with the Sharia, with the laws, then that's a different issue. It's funny because as an attorney, I know a lot of youth that have come up to me throughout my span of speaking and practicing as an attorney, and some find it like, how are you an attorney and a lecturer at the same time? How are you, in this domain of community service and leadership, and at the same time you're a lawyer? Most people, their impression of what a lawyer is far from these, ethical standards or the impression, the stigma, whether it be from movies, shows, things that we've been, exposed to. Even, some youth will come up and say, Hajj, but isn't being a lawyer haram? And point blank, no, it's not. It's not haram. In fact, I always like to defer, specific questions on jurisprudence, especially if they're, detailed or something that I haven't, looked into. I always say, go speak to the scholars, go look into this, or go to the Risala Amaliya and see. For example, a code of practice for Muslims in the West, based on the rulings of Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Sistani, there's one of the questions in there that says, is practicing as a lawyer, as an attorney, is it permissible or not permissible? And the answer is point blank, it is permissible so long as you do not lie, cheat, deceive, etc., etc. And it adds a bunch of things that essentially are the same thing for any practice, for any professional, right? So you can be a doctor so long as you don't lie, deceive, cheat, etc., etc. You can be an engineer so long as you don't lie, cheat, deceive, etc., etc. The same applies across the board. In fact, it's in some of these fields of practice that we can find ourselves redefining the roles that we have as leaders in our community, redefining it and kind of reconfiguring the paradigm in which we see the world. one of the reasons why I became an attorney is I wanted to understand the way systems work, right? I wanted to get a better understanding of the way government works, civic society works, laws and regulations, the way they affect people's lives, companies, organizations, etc. So when I said, hey, I want to become an attorney, it came from that aspect, right? This desire to learn the way, hey, how does the world around us work? Also inspired with that in conjunction with this desire to serve the community, serve our faith, serve our school of thought, is this principle of that Hajj Wissam actually mentioned earlier, going off of what Sheikh Shabbar mentioned, which is, you know, man arafa nafsahu arafa rabbah, whoever knows himself knows his Lord. This journey that each and every one of us has in this desire to better understand ourselves in this pursuit of being servants of God so that we can better understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that guides everything that we do. And subhanAllah, as Sheikh Shabbar was speaking, a verse in the Holy Quran came to mind that my brother mentioned to me a very long time ago. And we were talking about, as youth, we're talking about verses of the Holy Quran and what has an inspiration in our lives and what's your favorite verse from the Quran, if anybody's ever asked you that. One of those verses was, وَهَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ, right? And is the reward of good anything but good? And that's looking at with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the way we look at the world, the paradigm that we fit ourselves in is do good, be good. The only reaction to that goodness is inshallah going to be goodness, and the one who gives rewards and the one who gives is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So positioning ourselves constantly and reminding ourselves, whether it's professionally, career-wise, your business, things that you're struggling to do, aspire to be that best version of yourselves in whatever context you find yourself in. And I learned this personally in some aspects, you know, the hard way. I had to be reminded of this. God will take care of you. As much as you strive, as much as you do, as much as you work hard, at the end of the day, you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you have your intentions in the right place and you're reminding yourself consistently of your purpose and the bigger picture, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of you in ways you've never imagined.
Ahsant Haj Jalal. So we'll start with the questions from our viewers. I will direct the first question to respected Sheikh Shabbar. Sheikhna, the question is, when the viewers are listening to you and benefiting from you or any of the other speakers, and of course each person has their unique background, what they see is 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. That's the length and the duration of the program. However, what they're wondering about is what goes into preparing for that half hour, 45 minutes, hour presentation. What's the behind the scenes work that is needed to produce that presentation?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. One quick addition to what all the brothers were saying, which I remembered when we saw all these different perspectives through which we look at, you know, the life of the Prophet of Islam and Ahlul Bayt, is I remember Sheikh Wahid Behbahani, who was the great Usuli scholar just before Sheikh Al-A'zam, Sheikh Ansari, in his book Fawaid al-Ha'iriyya, once speaks about a scholar who read the book Kafiyah. Kafiyah is a book on Arabic grammar of Ibn Hajib, but he read it 21 times. And he says every time that he read that book, he took away something different from it. And every time that he read that book, he understood it in a different way. Why? Because every time you read something, you look at something, your perspective often changes based on where you are in life and what experiences you have. And that's similar to what we're having now, that everyone has their own different experience. Everyone brings their own background and expertise to present something in front of other people to benefit from. When it comes to preparation, Shahr Ramadan is obviously more difficult because in the state of Siyam, a person has to make sure they don't attribute anything to the Prophet of Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Ahlul Bayt. That is not correct. So you have to kind of be 100% sure that what you're saying is correct and authentic. Not that it isn't anyway, but I'm saying that even more we have to be careful. And of course, it takes time. It takes time because the religion of Islam and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam are very vast. You know, someone once asked me, why does it take someone in Hawza 18, 20 years and he's still studying jurisprudence? Why does it take someone so many years and they're still classified as a student in the Hawza? And some young people who were, you know, from the West, they complained. They said in a university setting, after a number of years, let's say after you've reached your PhD level or whatever, post-doctorate, you're able to give your own opinions. So why isn't that the case in Hawza? It takes them years upon years upon years until they can give an opinion. And that's because we have so much knowledge. We have so many different perspectives. We have so many different ways within which I can look at a certain thing. And so because we have so much material, because ulama have done so much hard work to compile books of riwayat, books on any topic that you think of, it then of course takes time for us to go through that material, to see what is useful, what is beneficial. And to be honest, personally, I have, for example, a set time that I know that this is just Hawza time in the year. Because Hawza normally, for example, after Arba'een until the end of Sha'ban is just for studies. So I don't travel, I don't go anywhere, I don't accept, you know, anything to do with speaking. I'm there. And even in the summer, then the Hawza of Najaf, for example, opens for a few weeks, or about a month in the summer. Hawza of Qum also. But in the summer, we have, for example, Shahr Ramadan nowadays, or Muharram. But even in that time when I'm, you know, sitting and waiting to go to class, I still think about something that I can recite in Shahr Ramadan. I'm still thinking about something that I can recite in Muharram, even though it's 6 months away, even though it's maybe 1 year away. I'm still gathering information, thinking, trying to present something in front of people in a way that is interesting to them, that they're able to, you know, digest it. And I've always said the best doctor is the one who gives medicine without people realizing. So it's not just gathering the content, it's how to, and the respected speakers and scholars will be able to attest to this, is how to present that information so someone actually listens to it. And so it does take time. Of course, it does take time. I remember one Muharram, as soon as I finished on the day of Ashura, you know, you have a day full of majalis here and there. I came home and I started thinking, what am I going to speak about next year? Because certain topics, they require a long time of preparation. Certain things we can't find. You know, certain times you've thought of a question and you look in this book and that book and you ask this person, that person, you can't find an answer. So it differs, but sometimes depending on the topic, the time span can be very long. But generally speaking, it takes obviously a few hours per lecture to read that material that has already been prepared from beforehand. You know, material that we already have. It takes a few hours to get it together, to reread, until we can put it in front of the dear brothers and sisters.
Ahsantum, Shaykhna. I think that was an insightful answer, and I think that the length at which, you know, you have it in your mind as to when you're going to prepare or what kind of topics you want to address is very poignant, because I think sometimes people have the impression that, you know, the night of or the night before you scramble your brain and you think about what it is that you want to put together, but really it's a culmination of the work that you've specifically done for the lecture, of course, over the last, you know, few weeks or months, but then the years of hard work and study that you put in likewise. So ahsantum. I'm going to field a question here now from one of the viewers in London. So this question comes from London, and the question is, what differences can you see from the UK audience than that of the US/Canada audience? And why is the North American audience ahead? What do they mean by ahead in the question? I don't know, but why is the North American audience ahead of the UK? I think probably given the amount of time, say Shabir, you've spent in the UK as well as the US, you might be best placed to give us some insight on this.
I guess ahead is a very arbitrary or subjective term. It can be defined a lot of ways. But usually they say the grass is greener on the other side, right? They may think we're ahead, we may think they're ahead. But in my time in the UK and US, I think, we're products, and this came up in the lecture series, and I'm sure a lot of the other brothers also, from the ones that were able to pop in on the lectures, which are phenomenal from the dear brothers. We are products of our environment, like what is true in the general population of the United Kingdom and what's true of the general population in the United States, you'll find many times reflected in our own communities. I'll give you an example. From the perspective of sociology, which is the study of societies, the United Kingdom and Europe at large is much more atheistic than the United States, for example. The United States is the most religious developed country in the Western Hemisphere. And so you'll see that reflected in our communities as well. Well, there's a historical background as to why that happened. Well, the number of wars that took place in Europe due in the name of religion led to an environment where the general population began to say, well, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater, essentially. So let's get rid of all of religion in hopes that there will be no more violence in the world. Well, the World War II, World War I, World War II, and the 20th century showed that wasn't true. That if you remove religion, violence doesn't eliminate. Violence continues in nationalism and many other forms. So a lot of the questions in the Europe and in the United Kingdom surround issues such as theism, God existing, not existing. That's a very, very popular topic there. Does God exist? Does God not exist? And you see that on public forums. So you see that in the news, you'll see Oxford debates on this. You'll see a lot of that going on in the United Kingdom. In the United States, most people are very religiously inclined, or like God is something that people are very close to. That dynamic is shifting a little bit in certain areas. An example of that is Atheist Shoes, which started in Germany. The first place that they look to expand, this shoe company that has atheist written on the sole, because marketing identifies, comes back to everything being connected, at least in my mind. Marketing is about values, and the value that they espoused was atheism. Well, where after Germany, what was the first market that they went to after they conquered the German market? They went straight to California. So within the United States, you also find that it's not monolithic. The questions and the views of the communities within the United States are not the same. The communities in California many times will be reflective of their environment, their environment of the state of California, which is generally more liberal, and people had a migration in the 1800s from the eastern part of the United States towards the western part of the United States. And those people who migrated many times were people who were considered pioneers or cowboys, if you will, people of this nature. All of this summarizes to the issues in the United Kingdom are many times reflective of the general community that is there. So atheism, agnosticism, or theism is a big issue. But there's another challenge in the United Kingdom that I noticed, which is because in the United Kingdom, the communities are so concentrated. Like, let's look at London. You have so many, you can get from one end of London to the next, although it may take a lot of time because of traffic and things of this nature. But in terms of geographic distance, it's not as much. The United States is very, very distributed. So the second challenge that many of our brothers and sisters in the UK faces, there's a huge debate circuit, or a lot of the Shia perspectives are being questioned by other Muslims within Islam, the other perspectives of non-Shia communities, the Hanafi school, the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, the Hanbali school, or for example, the Barelwi school, the Deobandi school. And so a lot of this becomes emerging as well. I noticed this when I was speaking in some of my lectures. So in the university, many are challenged about why do we believe this? And so there has to be a narrative around that. In the United States, you find a lot more differences on that front. And so there's a lot of things that are really, really great. I think there's things that we can learn on both sides, but God centricity is now emerging and more, especially on the coasts. But a lot of the issues that the Shia community in America is trying to figure out is how do we, for example, shed this Islamophobic image that's popular in the media, for example. And I think that goes both ways as well. But also, how do we develop spirituality? These are big questions that are emerging. That's why, because people feel a big void. In America, we have a big culture of entrepreneurialism. And that's great on one side, it's beautiful on one side, but the challenge that emerges from that is it puts entrepreneurs on a pedestal, the ones who make it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's virtuous or ethical or anything of that nature. So people get successful in entrepreneurship in America, but then they feel empty a lot of times. They're like, I feel this emptiness. And that's where they're looking to spirituality and many other things for meaning. There's a lot to be said, but I'll leave it there.
Ahsantum, Sayyidina. I think, I think you could go into a lot greater depth about the differences between the two, but that's a good snapshot of the situation. A couple of other questions that we've got here from London, UK, and Manchester, UK as well, is if I'm, a person who's trying to, improve my religion, I'm trying to learn more, I'm trying to increase my knowledge. What are some of the things that I can listen to, and what are some of the books that you'd recommend reading to sort of increase my my knowledge and my understanding of the religion and my core fundamentals? Sheikh Ahmed, I think maybe you'd be well placed to give us some insight on this.
Thank you, Jazakallah khair. In terms of the reading material and material to sort of broaden your horizons within the Islamic scope, just like anything in religion, anything can be classified as either mustahab, wajib, makruh, mubah, haram, right? Any action that you do. Similar is it when it comes to knowledge, right? Now this person is obviously asking about broadening their horizon within the Islamic scope. So more or less it's between wajib and mustahab, right? So knowledge itself is also split into the same way. There's wajib knowledge and then there's mustahab knowledge. And I find that a lot of the times, this is especially within Islamic religious people and religious families and communities, a lot of people, they come and they say, well, what can I read? What can I read to gain more knowledge and to learn more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of us, or a lot of the people that are asking rather, they are expecting, for example, this book about aqaid, or this book about some sort of some topic that many people don't know about, or this book of hadith or that. They're expecting something that they themselves don't already know. But usually when somebody asks me that, I say, well, have you picked up your code, the Islamic code of Muslims in the West? Have you picked up your Marja''s handbook, your fiqh handbook? Have you picked up, for example, Aqa'id al-Imamiyya, which is a basic book about the basic aqa'id of the Shi'as? Do you know your wajib knowledge first before asking about the mustahab knowledge, in a sense? So the first thing that I would recommend is reading up on the wajib. So the wajib fiqh and the wajib aqa'id. Picking up your Marja''s handbook, picking up your Marja''s fiqh book, and also picking up a book on aqa'id. A good book is Aqa'id al-Imamiyya, for example, which is one that we study very, very thoroughly in the Hawza. The problem with me is I don't read a lot of English books. My books are more centered around Arabic books. So another good book is Bidayat al-Ma'rifah, which is a very, very good book in basic aqa'id, basic beliefs. It goes a little bit more into depth than Aqa'id al-Imamiyya, but it's a very good book, especially with the fact that it looks at modern takes and modern theories and either accepts them or refutes them. And the method by which the author presents is very academic, but also simplified. Another book is Bab al-Hadi Ashar, and these books that I'm speaking about are ones that we study in the Hawza. Obviously, we expand on them much, much more, but some of them were actually made as just reading material for the public. Sheikh al-Mudaffar, when he wrote Aqa'id al-Imamiyya, he wrote it for people in just the layman's person, as they say. Or Bab al-Hadi Ashar is part of a huge encyclopedia of books, or like about 12 volumes, I think. And that one, small book, Bab al-Hadi Ashar, the 12th door of the volume of books, is about aqa'id, and it's meant for just the normal person, right? So for the brothers and sisters that want to pick up reading material, I ask you, and I advise, and I'm nobody to advise, But pick up the fundamentals. Look at the fundamentals. Go back to the fundamentals. Even if you feel that you understand the fundamentals, read them again, and you will honestly derive something that you did not derive and benefit in a way that you didn't benefit before. Just as Sheikh Shabbar Mahdi said, where some of our ulama studied different subjects 6, 7, 10 times over. It said Sayyid Sharaf ad-Din studied the book of eloquence more than 8 times, if not 18 times, right? And he always benefited something else. Go back to the fundamentals, my brothers and sisters, even if you feel like you know them. Go back to the fundamentals, read the fundamentals, be grounded in the fundamentals, and you know, you would have for sure, at the very least, done your wajib, but then you can move on to the mustahab and expand yourself in terms of mustahab books as well, or knowledge rather.
Ahsan Sheikhna. I have a question for Hajj Wissam, and in fact I had a discussion last night with one of the brothers regarding this over a cup of coffee, which sounds really good right now. So Hajj, the question is, especially, we're almost there, couple hours. The question, Hajj, is especially after Laylatul Qadr, which is the peak of Shahr Ramadan, how can we maintain our spirituality? How can we maintain that momentum that we have? How can we sustain it such that it doesn't just fade away after a few days, after the whole month of Ramadan, after, you know, having that high when it comes to spirituality and being very conscious of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for all of that to just fade away, and for us to basically have to wait until the next Shahr Ramadan. How can we sustain that from a psychological standpoint, so that truly we can carry on with that and benefit from that, and truly have it drive our actions throughout the year?
You gave me the heaviest question. You put it on my shoulders, Sheikh. When I throw this back at you, you know, Shuyukh, I give it to them. But I'll try my best to answer. Again, Sheikh Ahmed, it's a pleasure to see you, man. I haven't seen you in a while, so I just want to say that. And Sayyid Shabir also, it's just great to see you guys. And I think this is a great idea, just up front. So thank you guys for putting this together. Overall, as the Sheikh mentioned, you know, and I love that hadith, I'm going to steal it from you, Sheikhna, is that, you know, the heart of a person is in between Allah's fingers. So I think that's beautiful. And there's another, there's a Quranic verse, so on that level, just, it's really, what do you want to attach your heart to at the end of the day? So emotions play a vital role, which is pretty much your limbic system inside your whole body. So, and that's controlled by your hypothalamus, that controls your pituitary gland, and that releases, you know, certain hormones within your system. So on that level, what engages those things, there's actually studies that are happening right now. It's called epigenetics, and it's actually, your environments are actually expressing certain genes, the environment even you're in. So it's connected. So two things, your environment and your genetic code. And your genes can actually be triggered. They can actually be triggered by your environmental stimuli. It's amazing what's happening. This has been around since about 2012 now. But just to kind of just lay that out, then say to you, how do you maintain? So if you are this kind of person that you know your heart is at risk, the shaitan is after your heart and Allah is after your heart. At the end of the day, it's going to go one way or another. So if you attach it to Allah loves, inna Allah yuhibbul muhsinin, and if you despise what Allah doesn't want in terms of these kinds of things, then you've gained control over your own heart. So I'll give you five quick stages in terms of, this is a whole presentation. I'm going to give you literally like 2 minutes. But there's 5 stages that you really need to adhere to. And the first one is al-muraqaba, in terms of our scholars and what they say. The first step is al-muraqaba, having that sense of just that third eye, looking at yourself, always, and creating a schedule. Let us say finding your triggers. And there's a great book on that, The Power of Habit. If you read that one, that will give you a really good understanding on that book. So the brother who's asking for books, or the sister, I don't know what the gender base is. I might get in trouble right now just for saying gender. But at that level, that's the first level. So al-muraqaba. The second level, al-muhasaba. So you take it no. So now you develop this, you find your triggers. Now you have to list them down and see what the causes are. What is that? Now you're going towards a subconscious wiring, where you're going into your subconscious code. You're shining your flashlight of consciousness on your interior, which is your subconscious code. And this is where the mapping really starts. And you can even go into understanding yourself at a whole nother level. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa says, "Man lastu minna man la yuhasibu nafsuhu kulla yawm." Okay, so on that level, you have to, every day you have to take account of that. Take account of those actions that you go through. And there's a whole psychological level there, but I'm not going to get into that. Third level is al-mu'ataba. Now, let's say you commit the sin. You've gotten yourself there. Okay, and this is how to maintain yourself. If you're talking about maintenance, I'm giving you a whole regiment here in terms of what you can take with you. Al-mu'ataba is now you've committed the sin. And let's say you've gone against what Allah wants. Now, Imam Ali alayhi salam comes in and tells you, "Ataytuka," it says in Dua Kumala, "Ataytuka ya Rabbi, mu'tarifan, muniba, munkasiran." You go back to Allah, you submit your heart, you go into sujood, your heart goes into sujood. Not your physical body, your heart goes into sujood. It's a completely different experience. Now, when that happens, that remorse is a mercy from Allah. If you hold that remorse in your heart, that's a mercy for you. So hang on to that. So if you commit something wrong, go into that remorsefulness aspect. If you can maintain just that step, I think that's so crucial. But you have to realize what those steps are before. So fourth level is al-muharaba. Now, getting yourself to where it's such a pain, you know what you have done wrong, and you're going now against yourself. Now, I want to give you something here really quick in terms of the psychological aspect. Guys, neurons that wire together, fire together, bottom line. And let me show you how. So I love when a person comes up to me and they tell me like, you know what, I'm going to do everything I want right now. And in 20 years, I'm going to go to Hajj and I'm just going to be forgiven. You know, I'm sorry, you know, you're not going to even know what Hajj is in 20 years, because if you continue on the path that you're going, you will not know it, because don't do the things you don't want to become. Don't. And you are going to become that person. So what happens with neurons is there's a presynaptic and a postsynaptic side, but how that works is the more you do something, you're actually hardwiring yourself. And this is how. So a neuron from the postsynaptic side needs voltage to actually trigger action potential. But from there, here's what happens. Bottom line, this is al-muharaba right here. So inside your brain is the fight. And watch how the dopaminergic streams actually happen. So on that level, once you fire this once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you keep going with the habit, and let's say it's a bad habit, here's what happens to you. It takes the neuron now, less voltage to fire. It sends more neurotransmitters across the synapse. And on the other side, the postsynaptic side, it actually triggers and it creates proteins which turn into what? More receptors. So what are you doing to yourself? You're hardwiring yourself. Bottom line. That's how it works. So if you think you're going to be able to eradicate that neural circuit out of your brain, just like tomorrow, I'm just going to turn it off. It's okay. I got it. It doesn't work that way. Al-muharaba happens at that level. And I'll give you this. What happens here is so important. If it's time to pray and it's time to eat for salah, it's either break my fast, all of us are going to break our fast. So if it's right here, I'm going to, you know what? I'm really hungry. And my stomach is just telling me just go after this. But on the other side, what? I want to pray. I want to pray before I break my fast. Really check your heart there. Where is it going to? Am I longing to be in sujood? Am I longing to be with Allah? Or am I longing to be with my hamburger? It's up to you. You know, it's really, you can't lie to yourself there. You can't. It's impossible. It's like you check your own heart when you're about to make that decision. But guess what? Here's what happens. You either get spiritually high or what? Your stomach gets high and you release the dopamine in terms of the stomach aspects of those aspects. But here's what happens and I'll give you the final stage. At that level, whichever thought you allow to win actually gets a dopamine kick. And it gets stronger. And it becomes a part of you further. And whichever thought you allow to lose, it actually gets weaker. Really think about that. And on the last level, so go through that muharaba, fight yourself there. The last level is al-muwadaba. Now maintaining and making sure that what? You get yourself constant with the new neural pathway, which is now creating, instead of eating the hamburger, you pray and you feel so great as you eat. So hopefully that answers your question. And I'm sorry if I took a little too long.
Ahsant Hajj. I wanted to actually chime in real quick, if you guys don't mind, with you guys mentioned books, and I think alhamdulillah one of the things that we're all passionate about here is books. I'll tell you from my personal journey, as a youth, I was not much of a reader. In fact, throughout my college experience, I was able to kind of get by and get great grades by compensating with my writing, but not necessarily spending too much time on reading. I'd read a little bit, get a gist of it, and then be able to talk about it a lot. It wasn't until I was challenged by some of my mentors to really take up reading so that I can deepen my knowledge base and give myself more substance. Not necessarily for sharing with others, but first and foremost, for me to develop a sense of substance and a knowledge base for myself. So I think one of the most important things to acknowledge and consider is when you're looking to learn and share with others, the most important aspect of that is learning for yourself. So anytime I get up, for example, to give a presentation, I don't talk about things that I don't know, first and foremost. Secondly, it's a journey of me sharing what I'm trying to learn myself. It's a journey of me expressing this coming to closer to the knowledge of whatever subject we're discussing, and then sharing it from a humble perspective of, hey, this is something I've come to, I've understood, I've learned, and I wanted to share with my brothers and sisters, my community, etc. Some books that I would include as recommendations, I know Sheikh Ahmed mentioned some of the books in Arabic, but some other books to be of, I believe, a lot of benefit for our brothers and sisters that are English speaking are this series of a series of lessons in Islam by Sayyid Ali al-Hakim. One of the books is The Progeny. It's a highlight-based approach to the lives of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Another one included in that series is the book on Creed, Al-Aqaid. Sheikh Ahmed mentioned Aqaid. Excellent book in getting a basic understanding of some of the Aqaid of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, or the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. In this series, there's a few other books. Sayyid Shabir is pulling his copies as well. There's Sayyid Shabir, do you got practices in there? Because there's practices, there's social affairs, there's Creed, there's The Progeny, Ahsant. What else? I think I'm missing one more. Anyways, excellent series. Yes, that's another book I was going to pull and recommend. The Understanding Karbala, which is based on the original Arabic book for Sayyid Muhammad Sa'id al-Hakim, Faji'at al-Taf. This really book,
very good.
And Sayyid Shabir, chime in whenever you'd like to kind of give your perspective on it. I'll tell you, that book did a tremendous work for me in better understanding the movement of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam against the backdrop of history with the rest of the Imams. A lot of times when we're looking at ourselves and our own spiritual journey in gaining closeness to Ahl al-Bayt, so we can ultimately gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we think about the tragedy of Karbala, right? We think of the ship of salvation, the light of guidance that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was, but often misunderstand his movement as something that was different than the rest of the Imams, when in fact, it was a continuation of the movement of the Imams before him and would be continued by the Imams after him. How do we reconcile the stance of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam with the seemingly contradictory, but in reality were not contradictory at all, stances of the Imams before him and after him? Another book that I'd recommend alongside Understanding Karbala would be the book by Sheikh Mahdi Shamsuddin, Hussein's Revolution, also originally in Arabic, Thawrat al-Hussein alayhi salam. That's in Sayyid Shabir's hand. Thank you so much, Sayyid Shabir. And furthermore, what I would recommend is another book. I don't know, Sayyid Shabir, if you got this as well. This is also good for getting a basic understanding of Shi'ism, Shia history, the history of persecution that was experienced by Shias across history from the beginning with Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam after the passing of the Prophet, all the way until the modern day. That book is The Shia, Identity, Oppression, and Horizons. Yes, Sayyid Shabir. Man, you got it all, Sayyid Shabir. You got it all, man. This is why I love you. We're on the same wavelength.
These books are gold.
Another book. Naam?
These books are gold. Especially
Alhamdulillah.
the Sayyid Riyadh and of course Sayyid Hakim ones are really fantastic. And Ayatollah Shamsuddin one is really resonating. The lessons of the course of history one is phenomenal. I don't know if you have that one. That one's really, really good.
Yes. That was originally Harakat al-Tarikh for Sheikh Mahdi Shamsuddin. Also a very, very beautiful book in Nahj al-Balagha. Hajj Wissam spoke about Nahj al-Balagha and that inspiration that changed him. And I'll tell you, I was beside him during that period of time. Just, alhamdulillah, I had those experiences. We a lot of us together had these experiences together in different ways. So that book, Harakat al-Tarikh, or the course of history, a study in the peak of eloquence, again, Sheikh Shamsuddin. All of these books, by the way, are available on Amazon. So you don't necessarily need to hunt down for a bookstore or a publisher that carries these. You just type in the titles and you can see the books.
Some are in Kindle too, right? Sorry, Afwan Hajj. Some are in Kindle form as well, right?
Yes, some of them are Kindle as well. So some of them you can have just right off of your phone. Another book, since I'm on a streak here and nobody's stopping me, another book I'd recommend is the Marji'iyya, or Marji'iyya, A Candid Conversation, which is a conversation had by with Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Sa'id al-Hakim. What's beautiful about this book, and I know with some people, Marji'iyya becomes a sensitive conversation, but really when you speak to our Maraja and you speak to our scholars, it's not really a sensitive one, and it's not even a personal one. And that's the beauty of our scholars, that the whole conversation with Sayyid Muhammad Sa'id al-Hakim, who is a marja and a scholar in his own right, all of his answers, all of his anecdotes, all of the conversation that's had with him is actually referring to the scholars that came before him, right? The experiences of the scholars that came before him. So it's beautiful to see once you really sit down and you speak to our scholars. And this, again, I know we've mentioned in different contexts, the ziyara, the visits that we've had to the holy city of Najaf, the holy city of Qom, and the conversations that we have with our scholars of the seminary and the Maraja. But this book is a great insight to understand directly from one of the Maraja how they view Marji'iyya. Not necessarily who you should follow, or not necessarily the Marja to be followed, but rather from an in-depth look at the questions that we have regarding religious leadership. So this is, again, a beautiful book that provides one great insight into getting a better understanding of the system of emulation that we have during the time of occultation. So just wanted to chime in, give a few book recommendations. There's a lot more, by the way, if someone wants to have more depth into these subjects. And again, like my mentors emphasized with me, I'm working on myself. I'm trying to be a better example of this for myself, is you want to learn, you want to gain depth, you have to read, right? It's not enough just to, as much as, you know, we love our lectures, and alhamdulillah, we have a great group of speakers and lecturers amongst us here. As much as it is that we can benefit from lectures, it's not enough to just stop at that and listening, but rather reading is a whole different experience and provides us the depth that we really need.
While we're on it, I'm just going to chime in on some secular books. Is that okay? The ones that are
All
an
right,
arm's
all
length of me. This one's a really good one. I recommend to say.
By the way, Afan, say it before you go into that. Afan, some of these books, because I already know some of the stuff that Sayyid Shabir is gonna add, and I know Hajj Wissam can definitely add some more books, and maybe some the shuyukh can add some more. I may add some more. Sayyid Badr may add some more. It may be a whole discussion on books. But some of these books definitely go hand in hand with our own personal development and our pursuit of being better versions of ourselves. So keep that in mind, because it adds a lot of depth to you growing as a person, as an individual. Afan, Sayyid, tafadhal.
Absolutely. This is a really good book that is by one of the students of Dr. Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize. I think two things that are really, three, there's a lot of subjects, but philosophy, psychology, and history. These are very valuable pursuits in the secular domain that will help you in terms of clear thinking. Obviously, everything that should be aligned with the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, nothing in contradiction to that. But understanding like how your mind works, as Hajj Wassam and the other brothers have mentioned, is very, very, very valuable. This book talks about things like, why does an aspirin that's like 25 cents versus an aspirin that's $2, why does the $2 aspirin work and the 25-cent one not work? When in reality, they're the exact same aspirin. It's just a perception that you have in your mind. And so it talks about not only the fact that human beings are irrational, but we're actually at times irrational in a predictable manner. One which is like very, very, you can actually, said if we can get Sayyid Hussein al-Hakim on the call next time, he really enjoyed this book. He had some very valuable insights. And I think it'll be really amazing to get him on the calls. This is also a really good book, really quickly, that I have within arm's length of someone. If you're going through a difficult time, definitely want to check out this book. It's by a psychiatrist, The Road Less Traveled. It can be very helpful for anyone going through trauma or difficulty. And really quickly, second last book, Poor Economics. This is really, really important about anyone who's passionate about eradicating poverty, philanthropy, volunteerism. There's a lot of narratives. One of the biggest takeaway from this book, these are two MIT professors who wrote this book. And they said the biggest loss of poverty, the biggest problem that emerges from poverty in our world is lost talent. You could have the next Einstein, you could have the next thinker, you could have the greatest person on the planet who's just living in an environment where they're in poverty, maybe in rural India or rural Africa or rural Middle East, and their potential is never realized. And that's really important to know. It's very important to have intelligent conversations around that. And I think the last one that I have nearby is Developing the Leader Within by John Maxwell. Really great leadership book. But nonetheless, I'll stop that there.
Ahsantum. So before we field a few more questions with Brother Muhammad, I want to move to another segment of the program, and this is going to be very fast-paced. I'm going to time you guys. In 60 seconds, would each and every one of you be able to provide us and share with us a major takeaway from your lectures during the holy month? What is that one takeaway in 60 seconds that you want us to take from your presentations? And I will start with Sheikh Shubbar.
60 seconds is very little. What I would say is, as my lectures were focused on looking at the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam, ziyarat Aminullah, one thing that definitely can be taken from that is that everything that a person should do is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the reason why Amir al-Mu'mineen became Amir al-Mu'mineen, and the reason why Imam Sajjad became who he was, the zina of the worshippers and the beauty of the worshippers, the reason why they reached that status was because whatever they did solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so sometimes I put a certain amount of money, but I only get a very limited result. Another person puts a lot less money, but gets a much greater result than me. Why? Because that person was more sincere. And so the main thing we see from the lives of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, especially from that ziyarah, is whatever they would do, they would never look at pleasing the people of the world, and all they would look at is pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in whatever that they perform.
Ahsant. Sheikh Ahmad.
Ahsan Sheikhna. My lectures were, as we said, or as it was on the poster, different topics every day. Some of them philosophical, some of them practical, some of them, ideological, aqa'id based. But they were all under the general umbrella of holistic Islam. And we discussed holistic Islam in the beginning, having a holistic understanding of Islam, and having a holistic understanding of Islam more or less links to understanding the fundamentals. So I think more than once I said, going back to the fundamentals, going back to the fundamentals. That's more or less what I was pushing, the overall message that I was pushing, astaghfirullah kalimat ana, but I was trying to push in these lectures is holistic Islam, going back to the fundamentals, rooting yourself into the fundamentals. And so if you benefited from the discussions, great. If not, I ask you to go back to the fundamentals, read some books about the fundamental ideas in our religion, and that will make you grounded in the religion itself. And then from there, when you read or hear a lecture about a separate topic, a topic that is not so practical, or a historical topic, or something that is more theoretical in nature, you will be able to benefit from it much, much more. That is the overall message from my series. Alhamdulillah.
Sayyid Shabir.
So really quickly, Professor Peter Adamson at King's College at the time, and now he's teaching in Germany. He wrote a book called Philosophy in the Islamic World. And he's gotten invited to Google and many other very, very renowned institutions in the world. And they're always astonished that Islam and philosophy are used in the same sentence. And the reason he says is because the post 9/11 world, people have been shown an image of Islam where they don't think of philosophy or logic or intellectualism or anything, and they don't associate that with Islam. So the essence is Islam has a very rich tradition of philosophy, and Islam has a very rich tradition of ethics and a very rich tradition of spirituality. Our conversation was around Islam, philosophy, ethics, and spirituality. And I believe, and I have this thesis, that these tools that come to us from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in terms of Islamic philosophy, Islamic spirituality, and Islamic ethics, if we understand that first, and we see that in the second half of the lecture series, which was the Amir al-Mu'mineen as an embodiment of Islamic philosophy, an embodiment of ethics, and an embodiment of true Islamic spirituality, if we understand that, I tell you, we can share this with the world. The world needs this. The world is starving for these things. Because the people in the West, in America, in California, are going to Hindu spirituality. They're going to Buddhist spirituality, although they don't adhere to that. And I tell you, with my hand on my heart, I believe that they will benefit tremendously if they know Ali ibn Abi Talib, if they know the teachings of Rasulullah, the true teachings of their spirituality, of their ethics, of their philosophy. So first implement in our lives, and then share with the world to make the world better and show the true face of Islam.
Ahsan, Sayyid. Haj Wissam.
Well, number one for me, I always try to pass off these ideas to anybody who I see, anybody who I mentor, any clients that I have, doesn't matter who. And these three things are sincerity in your heart, the truth on your tongue, and present the truth through wisdom. If you can do that, I guarantee you that there's nothing in this world that can touch you. And if your heart is connected to Allah and you have that sincerity, and if that sincerity then manifests on your tongue with the truth, and then from there you can present the truth through wisdom and having that wise aspect to that, I think you'd be a very powerful person. But for me, one of the main things as I was going through this was to try to find an example of that. And there's something that really struck my heart a long time ago, and I'm not giving it just through this Ramadan. But it was Zainab alayhi salam. And it's to really think about when a person is going to walk into a place of just complete, where you have no sovereignty whatsoever, and you have no no aspects of freedom. And then you can walk in with an unbelievable strength. So you walk into a hurricane and you find the eye of the hurricane, and that calmness that sits in your heart. I think that is true character. And I think when you can find it in these kinds of personalities, be it a woman like Zainab alayhi salam, or the father, which is Imam Ali alayhi salam, I think that is character. So for me, it was those moments that really stuck out to me. And so her character and the way she presented herself in the storm of fear, and she had that security and that calmness with the ultimate confidence. So I think that's beautiful.
أحسنت حاج. Hajj Jalal.
Basically, what I tried to drive in my lecture series, which was called The Vision of a Virtuous Community, is that you and I, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, as Shia Muslims, regardless of where we are in the world, one, well, we're not an anomaly. Two, we exist in the societies that we live in, and we can be productive, contributing, all around amazing citizens in those societies where people look at us and see the best example of what a citizen means in that society. And at the same time, we can practice our faith and be the best practicing followers of Ahlul Bayt and Muslims wherever we exist. The understanding of this vision of a virtuous community came from several books, some of the books I actually mentioned, amongst others. And there's a lot of emphasis on understanding our role in our context, understanding that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam were able to adapt to the situations that they were in. They were firm in their identity. They knew who they were. We, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, are firm in our identity. We know who we are, but we have an understanding that we can adapt, and we are conscious of those who are around us. So discussions, for example, on taqiyya was had, a very transparent conversation on what taqiyya means, what taqiyya mudaratiyya means, our involvement in the systems of governments that we work in, understanding that from Ahlul Bayt to the prophets that came before them, their involvement in government and their ability to work within systems, even with those that oppress them, instead of necessarily being ones who wreaked havoc and wanted to flip the switch on everything else, but instead were able to be ones who brought betterment and reform in whatever context that they were in, as opposed to other ideologies and other thoughts.
Ahsantum, Hajj Jalal, and thank you to all the panelists as well for those reflections. We have about 20 to 30 minutes before the program concludes, so we're just going to try and field some more questions. So if anyone has any other questions that they'd like to, and they're itching to ask our speakers, then please do text in on the phone numbers on the posters, message in on the social media, YouTube, Facebook as well, inshallah. I thought I'd just add as well, in addition to the books that the brothers mentioned, there's a couple of other ones I thought that are worth mentioning. We have, for the month of Ramadan, it's especially pertinent, Begin with Praise, which is inspirations from Dua al-Iftitah by Sayyid Munir al-Khabbaz, and likewise by Sayyid Munir. We have The Mahdi, which is an excellent book and one which I'd highly recommend for everyone to read. And one final one as well I thought I'd mention is Gods and Mysteries by Sheikh Rizwan Arastu as well, an excellent book for those who are wanting to do some extra reading. I have a question here, and mashallah, the questions have been coming in from all over. We have questions from Birmingham, London, Manchester, Leeds, LA, Toronto, New York, Dubai. So mashallah, the questions are coming in from around the world. This question is directed at Sheikh Shubba. So Sheikh, this question reads from one of the viewers in Birmingham saying, what advice can you give to us in terms of balancing the pursuit of knowledge with life living in the UK? Do I need to travel to Hawza to achieve this, or can I do it within my daily life?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
It depends what you want to achieve. Because, of course, somebody has to have knowledge, somebody has to gain knowledge, and it's knowledge. I often say, Allah mentioned that it was the beauty of Yusuf alayhi salam that got him into the prison.
But it was his knowledge that got him out of it. If you read the story of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, the reason why he was able to get out of the prison was his knowledge. So everyone needs to study. Everyone needs to gain knowledge. It depends on where that person wants to reach. If they, for example, want to be a scholar, that is a separate discussion. If they just want to be a believer in the way that a believer should be, you know, filled with the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt and their religion, that's a different discussion. So it depends. I don't know if he's mentioned, or if they can ask again so that we can answer based on that. Because yes, you know, for ulama as well, if a person wants to be what level of a scholar, how should they study? Each has their own etiquette. But generally speaking, just so that we give the brother something, or the sister, again, I made the same mistake. Just so that we give them something, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam has a very interesting narration where he says knowledge cannot be gained except for through these things. He says kathratus su'al, you have to ask a lot of questions. Kathratul ishtighal, you have to be very busy, always busy with knowledge. He says tathhirul af'al, your action should be pure. If you commit sin, it's harder for you to gain knowledge. He says tawakkul dhil jalal, you should rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's the one that will give you knowledge. And the last one, he says khidmatur rijal, to be in the service of people of knowledge, of ulama. That inshallah will allow knowledge to enter into all of our hearts.
Ahsantum, Shaykhna. Wonderfully put. We have another question from one of the brothers in London, our dear brother, who some of you may know, brother Muhammad al-Hassan, and he asked a beautiful question. And his question is this, and maybe I'll put it out in the open, and whoever wants to answer this, or maybe we can have a few on the go, because I think it's more of a discussion is needed for this. He says, a hadith from Imam Ali says that the remedy is within ourselves, and to find it, we only need to reflect. What is this reflection consisting of? How do we reflect? How do we do it? What should we be doing? Is it contemplation? Is it a physical action we need to do? Sometimes when we're trying to sit and think, you know, our mind wanders away. So what is this reflection, and, you know, how do we achieve that? I'll throw this, you know, out there, and we'll see, inshallah, who wants to take a first crack.
Brother Jalal is itching for the answer. Bismillah, tafadhal, Brother Jalal.
I just want to say, hey guys, this is where it's at. This is the core of everything we're talking about. So I'm not going to be the first person to talk.
Maybe if I start off the discussion very quickly. There is a chapter in Wasa'il al-Shia. Wasa'il al-Shia is initially a book on jurisprudence, ahadith, and narrations to do with jurisprudence. And the ulama, when they want to analyze, you know, fiqhi subjects and issues, often they look at Wasa'il al-Shia compiled by Al-Hurr al-Amili. But in one of those volumes, there's a discussion on al-jihadun nafs, or struggling against your own carnal desires. And there's a number of maraji alive today that give advice to the believers to read the akhlaqi riwayat in that chapter. And it has been translated into English. A number of different hadith to do with akhlaq and morals and the nafs and the soul and this and that, within which it is mentioned, actually at the beginning of that chapter, where Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi says, and I mentioned this in one of the lectures actually, that you were told of the illness, you were told what the cure is, and you were made the doctor of your own self. But still you don't treat yourself. I.e., you were told that these are the problems that you need to stay away from. This is what you can do to cure those problems. And you were given the capability and the capacity and the power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to deal with them, but you don't do so. And so what the ishara was from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam is, when you reflect, one of the ideas of that reflection is you understand your nawaqis, your shortcomings. You understand what things have you performed that you shouldn't have. What things do you have within you that take you further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And so reflection allows you to understand those things so that then you can get rid of them. And I'll leave you with an example, and then the brothers can inshallah pitch in. The body feels pain. this pain is actually a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when I feel pain, it tells me, it's an indicator that I have a problem. If I didn't feel pain, how would I know that I've hurt my shoulder? How would I know that there's something wrong with me if I don't feel pain? Pain was a sign that I have some sort of problem, so I can go and treat it. The body feels pain, but the soul doesn't. It's not like, well, as soon as I have jealousy, I can feel a sort of pain in my soul. Or as soon as I have takabbur and I'm arrogant, I can feel it in my soul. The body doesn't, the soul doesn't feel it. So what I need to do with my soul is constantly reflect to understand where the illnesses are present, so that I can cure them. And that is one of the many understandings of this statement of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wassalam.
Ahsantum, Shaykhna. Anyone else want to take, maybe Haj Jalal, Haj Wissam, do you want to take a couple, maybe a quick fire go at this answer?
Jalal, go do your thing, man.
Haj, come on, man. Want to hear something from you, man.
Let's do 60. Let's do a 60-second quick fire each, and then inshallah we can benefit from both of you. Ahsantum.
You ask you give something about Imam Ali, then you expect it in 60 seconds. Like it's like it doesn't work. Here, I'll just give something really small. At the end of the day, وَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you long for death, you know, and you have the truth in your heart, death at the end of the day will not even scare you as a person. So if you can get yourself to be that kind of person where you walk into complete uncertainty, complete where Musa's mother, alayhi salam, she lets go of a basket and she pushes a baby away. That connection between her and the baby, there's no other connection between a mother and a child. But how do you do that taslim to Allah? How do you let go and you have no fear? That's the epitome of faith. So when you can get your heart to feel these emotions and to regulate your emotional code there, that's true strength. On that level, what really opens up the doors of reflection is death. That's the ultimate gate, if you really think about that. And death is the ultimate aspect in terms of that. But we also have a lot of problems in life. So what happens, those open up the doors of reflection. But guess what? That door is always open. It's always there. Allah's always got it open for you, but you choose to look away. Because once you go through the funeral, what happens a few days, 3, 5, 10 days later? You begin to what? Start looking away from the door. And you never choose to walk through it. Now, once you choose to walk through it, you know where you're going. You're starting to move away from the outside world and you're going towards where? The inside world. And this forces honesty. You have to be honest with yourself now. You can no longer rationalize and lie to yourself and say, you know what? I'm okay. Allah's going to forgive me. I'm just going to do this today. It's fine. He forgives everything. Allahumma, then you can recite, you know, Allahumma inni as'aluka bi rahmatika allati wasi'at kulla shay. You know a few things like that, and khalas, it's okay. But on that, once you open up the doors of honesty and you become brutally honest with yourself, wal qawli bil haqq wa in'az, to say the truth even if it's against myself. Now, if you start facing yourself there, and you start looking yourself in the mirror, that can be really scary. I'm sorry. Imam Ali alayhi salam also says, he says, if you were to expose my faults to even the closest of people next to me, they would flee away from me. Sattar al-uyub. On that level, when you start entering the basement, here's what I would tell you to do. If you could do this, go to your basement at night about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'll finish with this. It's pitch black downstairs. Don't turn on the lights. Walk a few steps down there. Watch a scary movie before you do that too. All right? If you could do that, great. Watch your sympathetic nervous system just ignite. And then walk a few steps into the basement. Just sit there. See what happens to your own physiology. Then if you can go further, good for you. Go down to the bottom of the stairs and just sit there in the silence. وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. Allah swears by the silence of the night. Sit there in the silence if you can, by yourself, 2 o'clock in the morning. Set your alarm clock tonight. See if you could do that. Okay. Then when you go down there, if you can sit there just for a little bit, this is a basement, not a grave. It's a basement. And for some of you might not even know what a basement is in terms of the UK. I'm sorry, but a basement is really underground. It's really dark. Okay. So it kind of representation of a grave. But from there, then if you can, pray a 2 rak'ah prayer. If you can do that in the middle of the night, just wake up and just let your heart sink. And then really think about أبكي على خروج نفسي. And really cry about the things that you've done that are so wrong against your own self. And the end with this, in the Quran it states, قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها. الدس, الغش, is really, that's what that is the person who's what? غش نفسه. He's committed what? He's swindled himself as a person. So reflect on these things and you can take a position against yourself in that way. And you can get to the final verse. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ. Then hopefully you can seek that and gain that salvation. If you fear the state of your Lord, the positive fear, not the negative fear, you refrain the self from the regressive desires, then surely if you do that, then heaven will be your abode. Inshallah, we can all make it there. And if you do that tonight, please remember me to dua. Okay, because I gave you the idea. All right.
أحسنت. Before we give it to Hajj Jalal, أو عفوا سيدنا تفضلوا.
لا تفضل شيخنا.
Afwan, when I was doing some preparation for my lecture, I did come across a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where he actually answers the question flat out. Your answers are amazing, Sheikh and Hajj. But طبعا there's no one like Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So for the barakah, I'd read this riwayah with your permission, if that's okay. This is in Al-Kafi. عن أبان بن الحسن الصقيل الصقيل قال سألت أبا عبد الله عليه السلام كما يروي الناس أن تفكر ساعة خير من قيام ليلة. The companion, he asks Imam al-Sadiq, he says, they say that thinking for an hour or thinking for some time is better than staying up all night in prayer. قلت كيف يتفكر? How does a person think, or what does he think about? Subhanallah, the same question this person is asking. قال يمر بالخربة أو بالدار فيقول أين ساكنوك أين بانوك ما بالك لا تتكلمين. It's to go by a ruin, for example. The Imam alayhi salam is essentially giving an example. He said to think and reflect is to walk by a ruin, to walk by a graveyard, مثلا. To walk by an abandoned home, to look at it and say, where are those that built you? Where are those that were living inside of you? Why is it that you're silent? Why don't you respond? To think about death, to think about the past, those that were here before us, what they left for us, and where are they now? The pharaohs of the time and the beggars on the streets, they're all in the same grave. They're all sitting beside each other, laying down and waiting for Allah Ta'ala to pass His decree. So essentially to think about life, but to think about death, to think about existence as a whole, and to think about where you lie in that realm, in that envelope of existence.
Ahsan Sheikh Ahmed. So we have 10 minutes and many questions are still coming. And thank you to all of our viewers, our brothers and sisters that are posing these very important questions. We'll try to take a few. We have one for Hajj Jalal. The brother or sister mentioned that in your lectures, you mentioned our narrative. The question is, what is unique about our narrative? In 90 seconds.
What is unique about our narrative? What's unique about our narrative is that it's blessed by Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, blessed by the Prophet, and ultimately blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to our narrative and our understanding of Ahlul Bayt, it is one that is able to coexist in any society across the world. And that's one of the most beautiful aspects of it, one of the unique aspects of our narrative. And that's the way Ahlul Bayt lived. They were able to live at the center of a community, of a society that took away their rights, but at the same time, they would contribute to that society and protect the body of the religion that society was essentially not fulfilling all of its rights, but still was able to work within it and not dismantle it. From Imam Ali alayhi salam all the way to our living Imam. Imam al-Hujjah, peace and blessings be upon him, has gone into occultation for what reason? One of the many reasons being to continue to protect Islam from those who claim Islam, but at the same time want to destroy the tenets of Islam and those who represent the tenets of Islam being the Imams themselves. That's the beauty of our narrative. And Ahlul Bayt, in that narrative, is that it is for them, for their followers, and for the rest of humanity. It's protecting the rest of humanity, even those who try to hurt them, harm them, destroy them, even though they don't even realize it.
I'm going to chime in for 60 seconds, that's okay, from a secular perspective to add on to what the beautiful answer Haji gave. Is that okay, Sayyidina?
That's fine, Sayyid Shabir. If I can also ask you a question that you can probably connect to this answer.
Okay.
How do you balance life between the connection with Allah and your professional life? If you could bring all of it together.
I learned from you and Hajj Jalal. That's the answer to that one. And then I'll go to the second one, go back to that one. Ask them, that's more pertinent to them, inshallah. But on the secular aspect, a few names you have to know real quick so I can do this in 60 seconds. Plato, Aristotle, Farabi, and Karen Armstrong. Karen Armstrong is an author on various different secular religions. In her book, A History of God, she's an expert in all the Abrahamic faiths as well as all global faiths. So she argues, and she prints this research from Plato. Plato argued he was against democracy. Democracy, he said, is mob rule wherever it is. And the reason is because you have people who are not informed about a particular matter making decisions about it. So if I'm not a doctor, I'm making decisions about medical policy, but that's not my expertise. I'm making decisions about when we should open up society, but I don't know anything about the coronavirus. And he said this happens in so many different examples in society. You ask economists to make a decision on medical policy, it doesn't work, and vice versa, it doesn't work. He said what society needs is an intellectual aristocracy. That means the smartest people are running society. And so he summarizes and says, society will not see peace until all philosophers become kings and all kings become philosophers. This was the view. Aristotle came forward, Arastu in Islamic philosophy known as Muallim al-Awwal, Muallim al-Thani, al-Farabi, who's either Turkish or Persian. There's a debate. I don't want to get into that. He said that if you look at the philosopher king that Plato was talking about, that is none other than in the personality of Rasul al-Azam, the Holy Prophet. That was that philosopher king that Plato was talking about in theory. Karen Armstrong adds on to this, that the question was, why is our narrative unique? She said the only religion on this planet that adheres to a system of philosopher kings from the beginning up until the end of times is Shia Islam, because it believes in a system of 12 philosopher kings after the Holy Prophet of Islam. That means in theory that the philosophers had defined as the best way to run society, Shia Islam, according to Karen Armstrong, who studied all the major religions, she identified that that's the closest thing that we have in theory to the right way to run society.
Sayyid Shabir, I'm going to add just a point real quick to that. That's in theory, 100%. The beauty of our narrative is that even when the theory is not implemented, that our narrative does not destroy the society that we're in, does not dismantle the order that exists within, and is able to adapt and continue to live and coexist, even with those that are actually going against that theory of their position as philosopher kings.
If I could say something real quick, just really on that as well, and I'm leaving that side of the screen just for them, but overall, just really one simple word, it's Tawheed. No one can challenge us on the face of this earth in terms of Tawheed. Why? Because Imam Ali, the Imam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one, if you can check that and go through history, search, do whatever you want. There is nothing more pure in terms of monotheism, in terms of the Ithna Ashari school of thought. There's nothing more pure in Tawheed than that. And if you want just something very simple, go to Nahj al-Balagha, just read Imam Ali alayhi salam when he removes actually one of the alphabets in terms of al-alif, and he's talking about Allah. Just that alone is just incredible. So Tawheed is really the center point of everything, and that's what we're all seeking. But at the end of the day, who gives you the best door to understanding that Tawheed? So I think that is the pinnacle of the whole discussion.
Just a 10-second thing about, I didn't want to undercut the person who asked the question about how you juggle and balance and give them a more substantive answer. I definitely learned from the brothers, but having passion about what you're doing in serving, that's very valuable. If you look at the lives of the scholars, they dedicated their lives, our maraja, our top scholars, either to scholarship and learning or serving the people through charity and endeavors like that, or just serving people at large. So develop a passion of serving and passion for what you do, and you'll go far, inshallah.
Ahsan, Sayyidina, thank you very much. Might have time for one or two more. We have a question now which has come in from Manchester, United Kingdom. The question is, how do you ensure that your speech is fluent and that you don't stop or stutter mid-sentence? And what are some general tips for good oratory skills when giving lectures and being fluent in your speech?
Can I give a 10-second answer to that?
Yeah, Sheikh, I was going to go to you anyway, Sheikh, no, don't worry. So,
well, I was just going to say, don't fast while you're lecturing. That's pretty much your best answer. That's your best bet.
And what's your second best bet, Sheikh?
Now, your second answer, 60 seconds. What I tend to do throughout the week when I'm thinking about a lecture is I tend to think of the points that I'm going to be hitting and go over them in my head like I'm lecturing myself. It's kind of weird, but I imagine the audience in front of me, and I know I'm hitting point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, and I more or less go through them in my head and how I'm going to say them and what I'm going to say. Now, when I'm actually lecturing, I'm not referring back to that idea, but more or less it's become ingrained. It's in the back of my mind somewhere. I think Hajj Wissam can tell me where that is, but it's in the back of my mind somewhere, and I'm referring to that, So I'm referring to the core idea. And because the core idea has now become so clear in my mind, I'm able to just spit it out, as they say. But simple answer: don't lecture while you're fasting.
So So you got two Bazzies on the call, man. That's dangerous. So it's
dream team, dream duo.
So overall, I'm gonna give you more of a scientific answer than the Sheikh. But overall, you have something where you have the control system and you have the automatic system in your brain, bottom line. So there's something within sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. So anytime you're about to present, that system is going to kick on. So what that system does, it's automatic. So it's under the autonomic nervous system, and that system, when it kicks on, it's getting yourself ready to fight or flight. So whenever you're about to present, you're going to be judged. How are you going to be judged? Your intellect is going to be judged. So that's fearful to a lot of people. Now, there's a 15-year Harvard study about intellect. That's one of the core aspects of an identity. So if your core is being judged, understand you're going to be nervous. And some people are actually more afraid of speaking than actual death. There's studies that are on that. So that's how much fear gets ignited. So let me give you a little bit about what happens and how the system actually works within your brain. So you have it's called the low road, and it's one of the theories, but it's called the low road, and it hits your amygdala and it hits your hypothalamus. And what that is, it's automatic. So right when you're about to get up, here's what happens to you, okay? Your heart rate is gonna go up. Your hypothalamus is like a thermostat. It controls your bodily temperature, okay? And everything that you do. When that happens, you're gonna start breathing heavy. Your palms are gonna sweat. You may start shaking. You can't even control your voice. So if that's what's happening to you, that's exact. The system is turning on. It's natural. It's normal. Now, here's what happens. That's all automatic. It doesn't ask for your opinion. It just happens. It happens to all of us. And even if you're a primed speaker and it'll still happen to you. It just depends on the crowd sometimes. But we know how to shut it off. You know how to shut off that system in your brain. So what does that system do? That's automatic. It has to get permission and validation from what? Your conscious ability, which is your frontal cortex. Okay. When that happens, it has to get validation that there is a danger. Is my intellect really being judged? Now, you're walking up to the stage and you're about to give the speech. It's all about those moments. That moment that you're walking up, it's what you tell yourself. Your thoughts will actually turn off the system or it will turn it on further. So if you tell yourself, oh my God, everybody's looking at me. Oh my God, I'm going to just fail. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Then guess what? You're going to fail. You're feeding the system. The system will actually turn on more and it'll dump more hormones into your bloodstream. And then you can't even, like, people will forget their name. Like literally, they will forget. You ask them their name, they'll forget their name. That's how nervous they get. So if you turn off the system is when you tell yourself, I'm fine, I'm okay, everything's gonna be okay. It will shut down the system and it will shut down your nerves because you're telling it there's no danger. So all that is you're reacting to danger. That's all it is. And it's part of your natural system. So turn that system off by telling that system, the subconscious, I'm okay, there's no danger. And if you could do that, then you can speak like I just spoke, which completely is horrible, I would say. But alhamdulillah, I appreciate it that I'm amongst giants. And see, even what I just did right there, I just gave you an example. See, I just shifted the whole conversation. But I just put the spotlight up on all my brothers. These are techniques that you can use then and develop yourself once you get past the nervousness. Now, I'll give you another technique. Let's say I want to provide a really amazing point, and I slow down my voice and I lower it. Now it's actually hitting a different part of your brain. And I know that. And your brain actually categorizes that as something very different. And now your emotions are different. And I become more intimate with you. And now I'm dancing with the audience. And I got you. See how that it's these are all small little techniques. It's incredible.
We're still fasting, man. Come on. You're killing me, bro.
It's just the ability to present. But what I tell you is, and to do that, just read the stories of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Imams alayhim salam. They were artists at this. They were incredible. And how they would take someone's heart who had absolute hatred towards them, and they would flip it in a second. That's what I study. I swear to you, that's my secret. I study that. When I see stories like that, and you see Imam Ali alayhi salam flip someone's heart 180 degrees in seconds. It's literally in seconds. And it's incredible. So study those stories. I would tell you, whenever you see that where there's a fearful situation, study, go into the story really hard, but look at the emotions that are there. And it's incredible what you could do. So again, forgive me if I took a little too long.
I'm going to add 15 seconds. Okay, you can time me. These are the following tips. 1, don't talk about anything that you do not know. 2, own your knowledge. So make sure that you know what you're talking about and you own it. It's a part of you. It's a you expressing your authentic self. 3, have a conversation. Don't give a speech. Don't give a lecture. Have a conversation. That's it.
Hassan.
Yes.
Perfect.
Then you can get to be that good.
I must say, I took like 5 seconds to get it up. So, but we'll give him the benefit of that. I think, inshallah, we've benefited so much from all of the respected panelists, the scholars, our brothers, Hajj. So thank you all so much for your input. Alhamdulillah, it's been a really beneficial program. We've seen lots of comments, lots of input. So inshallah, all the brothers and sisters viewing at home have benefited. not only from today, but from the entire month's worth of programs. And inshallah, I think we mentioned it at the start that if this is something that, the viewers find beneficial, then there's no reason why we can't, jump on Zoom every now and again to continue this kind of a different type of panel discussion. So Ahsantum, thank you so much. I think it's just worth mentioning for those in the UK that you might have noticed that there was a united and unified A'mal program which happened on the 3 Layal al-Qadr. And likewise, inshallah, there will be a similar program for the morning of Eid. So inshallah, on Monday morning at 9 a.m., from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m., there will be an Eid program which you can find live streamed on the various social media, Facebooks and sites of the individual centers, or you can check it out on the Mainstay Foundation's page. And as well, inshallah, links will be sent around to our website. This will consist of a dua nudba, recitation, as well as an example of a salah led by Samahat Sayyid Fadl Milani as well. So please do join in that to continue and finish off the month with a great unification program. I think likewise, Sayyid Abu Dhar, there's something similar happening in the US?
Of course, we always have something.
Of course.
Brother Muhammad. So similarly, we have a Eid program, inshallah, that will take place Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, and we'll rerun every hour to accommodate various communities and community members across the country. 9 a.m., which will include Dua Nudba, Zat Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and the prayer followed by the sermons with respected Sheikh Muhammad al-Sa'di and also Hajj Nazar al-Qatari. Just a quick point here, of course, we are very grateful to have our scholars and our speakers here with us tonight. And we are also very appreciative to all of our viewers from all over the globe, especially the UK and the US. One thing for all of us to keep in mind is, inshallah, all of us had this amazing journey during the holy month of Ramadan. And inshallah, whatever it is that we were able to build and accomplish during this holy month, we can capitalize on and keep that momentum going. That's why the Mainstay Foundation in the US and in the UK as one team with the various partners that are collaborating with us will continue these programming. Inshallah, stay tuned in the next couple of weeks for more information about programming that will consist of lectures, workshops for different age groups, similar programs to what we have today. Inshallah, this is going to be an ongoing, continuous journey for all of us. And inshallah, through these programs, not only can we stay closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we can stay connected as a community, at least virtually, for some time as we go through the COVID-19 crisis. So thank you to all of you. And inshallah, we can continue this discussion at a later time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah. Congratulations, guys.